I was really enjoying Steven Soderbergh's Ocean's 12. It's rare to see a filmmaker as inventive as Soderbergh take on such fun, mainstream material. Then, this happened.
Who am I supposed to be?
Sta arrivando Julia Roberts.
The film had stayed just the right side of suspension of disbelief, but after this Julia Roberts playing herself thing, it lost me. I spent the rest of it wondering how a director as smart as Soderbergh is could have thought this was a good idea. Eventually I figured it out, and funnily enough, it's the same reason most other directors today should be paying attention to what he's doing.
Mr. Everett.
Yeah, Brian.
Brian, hi.
A character walks into an office in a bank or wherever and talks to someone. How many times have you watched a scene like this? And how is it nearly always filmed? How does the director tell us where the characters are and what's happening to them? It's nearly always some variation of an establishing shot of the location, followed by a wide of the room, followed by over the shoulders, then into matching close-ups. This all works fine. We know where everyone is and what they're doing. But what if the director tried to do this without the establishing shot of the location? Or the wide of the room? Or the over the shoulders? Or even the matching close-ups? What if he stuck the camera in one spot, never moved it, and for good measure he just cut out all the bits of the conversation that weren't totally relevant without even bothering to hide the cuts? Would the audience still know where the characters were and what was happening? I mean, that's the kind of thing you'd only see in some sort of indie, student, experimental type of film, right?
Good morning.
Good morning.
And you are Mr.
Diaz. Miguel Diaz.
And you're here to open a...
SEP retirement account.
Terrific. Oh, it says here you're already retired.
I am.
What was your occupation?
I was a high school basketball coach.
Must have done very well for yourself.
What's your name?
Were you at all confused about the facts or emotion of that scene? No, me neither. We've had over 100 years of cinema now, and as a culture we're bombarded with visual stories. From the brilliantly layered to the pointlessly complicated, we take it in with ease. And as new mediums demonstrate, we have no problem inferring from the context to understand what's happening on screen. But despite this, most directors have been in no hurry to challenge the way they tell stories. Then there's Steven Soderbergh. Soderbergh is pretty unique in how willing he is to change his directing style. But I think there's one thing that ties all his work together.
A desire to just find a new way to give the audience information about the story and about character. There has to be a better way to lay things out for people, or at least you can be more adventurous and release information in a way that's less traditional.
Let me give you an example. Let's say you want to introduce a significant new character to the story. How might you do that? You could do it like a lot of films. A character wanders in, turns around, and waffles on a bit about who they are.
I'm the world's foremost authority on herpetology. That's reptiles, for those of you who don't know.
Or like Soderbergh, you can try to get the information to the audience in a new way. What if right there in the middle of the film, you introduce the character with his own little trailer? Or let's say you need to film one of the most ubiquitous scenes in movies, two characters getting it on. How could you illustrate to the audience who the characters are, what kind of world they live in, and how they feel about what's happening? You could do it the way it's nearly always done. Or The fact that Soderbergh is consistently inventive in the way he tells stories would be enough. But there's a flip side to our increased awareness of visual stories. The faster we as an audience get at picking things up, the more risk we get ahead of the storyteller and they lose us. Because we've seen thousands of hours of visual stories, we've a pretty good idea what's going to happen here. The context, the location, the lighting have all built up the tension well. But then, we're spoon-fed.
Connor, there's no sign of the machines. They're gone. It's way too quiet. It's almost like they're waiting for us.
And what at just the right amount of expectation mingled with uncertainty becomes groaningly obvious. Soderbergh knows that when a good storyteller wants to keep us engaged, he gives us just enough, and he's constantly pushing the limits of how little he can do it with. Can we skip the establishing shots and figure out what's happening from the dialogue and the context?
Morning.
Good morning.
And you are Mr.
Diaz. Miguel Diaz.
Instead of using music to build tension, can we use only the sounds from the scene? Can we intercut scenes from different time periods in the story without telling the audience which came when and let them put it all together for themselves?
And say, hey, honey, guess what? I spent 3 days with a hooker.
Can your character speak the intention instead of the line?
Imminent sustenance.
Overly dramatic statement regarding upcoming meal.
Okay, that one got annoying pretty quickly. As did the odd comic tone here.
Thank you for your time. Thank you.
And whatever this is.
Molly.
Have you ever been tested lately for the HIV virus?
The truth is, if you're going to push the limits, sometimes it's not going to work.
It's a problem that you have. I think a lot of your films could use an extra 10 minutes, and certainly this one. I mean, I think this is a good film, I really do. But I think it would be a much better film. I think you would have won over a few of the bad reviews.
It might be that you got an interesting story decision that kills the film for a lot of people. Or your style is just too different to connect to some of the audience.
Oh, this movie's too complicated.
But we now have so many different mediums vying to tell us stories in one form or another. A director has to ask themselves, do I want to play it safe to make sure the results are okay?
I got 2 Academy Award nominations. I won an Emmy for Flipper, a 2-parter.
Or do I want to push the limits and risk having to put the failures in front of an audience? What choice has Soderbergh made?
I'm not bothered by bad reviews.